Good evening, everybody. This is Greg Sayre, the administrative law judge in this case. Let's get this hearing started. Mr. McLean, are you ready to go on the record?
We are on the record, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. I call matter number 21-02182 in the matter of the Commission's broadband study and mapping pursuant to the Broadband Connectivity Act. Good evening and welcome. We are here today for a public statement hearing that was noticed on January 26, 2022. This public statement hearing concerns the Public Service Commission's study and mapping of broadband service, which means high-speed internet service. In a minute, we'll have a presentation from the Department of Public Service staff about this study and what we're hoping to learn from the public. The public statement hearing to be held this evening, along with 7 prior public statement hearings, is intended for public input into the study. My name is Greg Sayre. I am an administrative law judge for the Department of Public Service. I'm responsible for presiding over the hearings in this case and any legal procedural issues that might arise. This matter is currently before the Public Service Commission, and the study is being conducted by Department of Public Service staff. The commission consists of 7 members, and we're honored today to have one of the commissioners online with us today, Commissioner Diane Berman, and we will probably be joined in a few minutes by Commissioner John Maggiore. Commissioner Berman, would you like to make any remarks?
Thank you so much, Judge. Yes, my name is Diane Berman. I've been a commissioner since 2013. I'm participating tonight as a virtual listener. I look forward to hearing folks commenting tonight, and I appreciate people coming out virtually to make their statements. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Before we go into the details of the study, I want to explain the other ways you can comment in this matter, other than by speaking at these public statement hearings. If you could advance a couple of slides, please. If you did not pre-register to speak at one of the hearings, but you would like your views included in the record, there are a variety of other ways to comment that were listed in the public notice for these hearings. For those of you with computer access, we're showing a slide with the other ways to comment, and all of the details are in the January 26th public notice for today's event. You may comment by submitting comments on the department's website, by email, by regular mail, or by phone. And staff will explain in a minute how you can participate by completing our broadband assessment study and our speed test. Regardless of how the comments are submitted, they will be given equal consideration. Comments may be submitted and will be considered throughout the pendency of this proceeding. However, and you'll be hearing this date again a few times from us tonight, because this study needs to be done in a timely way, we really need your input by March 18th. Valerie Galasso of the Department of Public Service staff has a brief presentation explaining this study and the kinds of information we're hoping to get from the public. I yield the floor to Ms. Galasso.
Thank you so much, Your Honor, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. My name is Valerie Galasso, and I serve as the Chief of Public Policy in the Office of Telecommunications at the Department of Public Service. A little bit about why we are here today. In April of last year, the legislature passed the Comprehensive Broadband Connectivity Act of 2021. This bill allowed the Department of Public Service to create the Broadband Assessment Program, a program that's now housed within the agency's Office of Telecommunications. The program, whose work will be updated annually, will release this spring New York's first ever in-depth interactive broadband map detailing the availability and reliability of high-speed broadband infrastructure statewide. We are committed to making this program something that can be used by everyone, but we need your input in order to understand what's happening in your communities. Next slide, please. A little bit about how we're conducting our research. Mapping broadband infrastructure is no small task, and that's why we're using a 3-pronged approach. First, we're using internet service provider data to help us assess gaps statewide. Second, we're conducting field verification of high-speed infrastructure in the most remote places in New York State. And third, we're hearing straight from the consumer via our broadband assessment survey and through our series of these 8 public statement hearings. Next slide, please. What we hope to learn from today. We want to hear about your internet accessibility barriers. Among other topics, we're interested in hearing from those of you who are dealing with the following. You lack internet service entirely. Internet is unaffordable to you. You lack ISP competition in your area. And finally, you don't feel like you are getting the speeds that you pay for. Next slide, please. To wrap us up, we have 2 calls to action this evening. Our first is we are asking everyone in the state to take our broadband assessment survey and speed test by March 18th, 2022. You can visit www.empirestatebroadband.com, or if you're unable to take the survey online due to lack of connectivity, you can call our toll-free broadband assessment line at 1-855-NY-BB-MAP. That's 1-855-692-2627. For those of you who have already completed the survey, thank you. And we do encourage you to spread the word to your community members and family members. The survey is still online until March 18th. Thank you. Next slide. And finally, we at the agency are doing our part to make sure every eligible New Yorker is aware of the FCC's new Affordable Connectivity Program. The program provides discounts up to $30 a month toward internet service. You can visit www.fcc.gov/ACP or call 877-384-2575 for more information and to sign up. Thank you so much, and back to you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Galasso. Now I'll explain the process that we're going to follow today. The purpose of our hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to tell the Commission your thoughts on the issues in this proceeding. The statements you make today will become part of the case record. We have a court reporter joining us who will prepare a transcript of the hearing, which will be included in the official record of this proceeding so that your comments can be considered by the members of the Commission. When it is ready, the transcript will be available for view on the Department of Public Service website. This hearing is also being live streamed on the internet. This hearing is not an evidentiary hearing with cross-examination or a question and answer session, but is a forum to hear comments from you. If you have pre-registered to make a statement, we ask that you please summarize lengthy written statements orally and submit the full written statement by email or mail. Because of the number of people who have registered to speak, to be fair to those who are waiting to speak, we also ask that you try to stay within about a 5-minute time limit for your oral comments today. If you seem to be making too long of a statement, I may jump in and ask you to summarize and finish up, in which case you should send in the full details of your comments by one of the alternative means that I explained earlier and that are explained in the January 26th notice. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're holding this public statement hearing virtually. Normally, if this were an in-person public statement hearing, people would be allowed to sign up to make statements as they come into the hearing and as long as the hearing is going on. But in this kind of hearing, we cannot easily identify people as they get on the line to listen to the hearing. So as a result, we've asked people to pre-register. Let's get right to the speakers. If you're going to speak, please use only one audio input and one audio output at your end. Otherwise, we may experience problems with feedback when you're speaking. After we call your name, we will unmute your line, and Joseph White from our Consumer Services Office or I will let you know that you're unmuted. Please remember that if you have put your own telephone line or computer on mute, you will also have to unmute your line at your end before you begin to speak. If you have already spoken in a previous hearing, there is no need to make the same statement again, except to the extent that you may have something to add. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately capture your statement for the record. Our first speaker is Katherine Cowan.
Hi, people. How are you doing? I'm very glad to be here. Huh?
Just wanted to let you know we can hear you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you to the representatives of the Public Service Commission for holding these hearings and for the opportunity for me to speak. I timed this and I hope it's under 5 minutes. So my My name is Kathy Cowan, and I am treasurer of the Fair Internet Coalition. You have recently heard from my colleagues Frank Cantor and Jacob Kraniak. We are a grassroots consumer advocacy organization promoting reliable, affordable, and accessible broadband competition. We also work to raise awareness of consumer issues with existing providers, with the goal of bringing these voices to regulators and policymakers. I live in Highland in Ulster County in the Mid-Hudson region. And my personal story was started in 2019. We have one provider in town here, and my husband and I decided to give back our equipment and get our own router and modem. We did so. We returned the equipment, and we're happy that our bill would be much less than $207 it had been. The next bill came the next month, and it was $187. Apparently, the company had not registered our equipment for 4 days after we brought it back, so the next bill came with that equipment on it. The next 10 months, we spent calling every single month, and the bill would drop in increments and increments. They were charging us hundreds of dollars more than we needed to be charged. Finally, in the 10th month, we got hold of the retention department, and I convinced the guy through my spreadsheets and talking money with him that there was a mistake, and he fixed it, and our bill now is $58, which will probably go up. Over the past 2 years, I have run a local Facebook page called the Highland Community and Conversations, where many residents have come online complaining. I wanted to find out how people felt in town. In Highland, we have, as I said, only one provider, Optimum. Last year, the town board of Highland decided to question Optimum regarding their upcoming contract. They wanted to know why the return payments to our town are not based on the total revenue brought in. They asked to have an Optimum representative come discuss the matter at a town board meeting. Optimum would not send one, and the contract was due. Our town board refused to sign at that time, but after a while they knew there was no recourse. They had to sign or else lose the only internet company in our town. I have spoken and met with Representative Senator Hinchey, who wrote Bill S-7028, the Connect All initiative, which was recently passed by Governor Hochul to regulate broadband pole rentals. I also met with the AG's office and have spoken to Congressman Delgado. I, along with my Fair Internet colleagues, are asking for New York regulators and lawmakers for 3 things. 1, launch an investigation into the business dealings of Optimum by Altus USA. 2, eliminate barriers and regulations that limit competition, such as was done in the Connect All initiative. 3, ensure that funding for fiber deployment is distributed fairly to all players and make it easier for companies to register for this program. We've seen grants in the past from New York where hundreds of millions of dollars went to large incumbent cable providers with little or nothing going to smaller companies that are willing to offer competition. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and I look forward to working with New York regulators on this issue going forward.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Deborah Copald.
Hold on. Can you hear me?
It's unmuted. Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you, Judge. I just want to briefly touch on a few topics, and I think I'm going to confine most of my comments in writing. But you know, there's an issue with the fact that New York State acknowledges that the wired technologies have higher throughput than the wireless technologies. The best technology is fiber to home, and I'm just going right from your website, which is also known as fiber to the premises, FTTH or FTTP, which are better even than cable modem and DSL, which are all generally still better and more reliable than satellite, and in many cases WiMAX. The only wireline technology listed on your website that I wouldn't favor is broadband over power line, which has been used out west. It creates a lot of electromagnetic pollution on the wires, and it's very difficult to filter out that pollution from someone's house. People have complained about it. There have been filings with HUD from people who can't tolerate their own homes because of the sensitivity to the signals from BPL, broadband over power lines. So I wouldn't be favoring that at all. Also looking at internet access in New York State figures, broadbandnow.com, there's a pretty good rate of broadband access in New York. In fact, New York is one of the top states. I think it's number 2 in the country for broadband access. So with that in mind, I want to continue to encourage the Commission to look at wireline technologies. Obviously, I think some of the commissioners know that I have been in litigation with regard to matters that touch on wireless technologies with regard to smart meters. Not really necessary to rehash all of that, other than to say that a FOIL that was done by an Ulster County resident showed that the Commission had not reviewed any studies. They had really punted that to other commissions, and the DC Circuit Court of Appeals had a ruling this summer, which I know, I believe Odette Wilkins mentioned it at the 1 p.m. meeting today, where the FCC, first they said they provided no review of the non-cancer evidence of radio frequency radiation whatsoever, which is what you would get from a WiMAX system, et cetera. And they relied on the FDA and said you cannot rely on other agencies, which is clearly the same thing that the PSC has done in the past. There has to be a comprehensive public conversation about the problem with wireless technologies, wireless broadband. Going back to the state website, there was really only one county that was closer to the Adirondacks. I believe it was Hamilton County that had low rates, but there as well, I think you need to be promoting wireline technology. And just briefly, I'll mention that the insurance companies, Swiss Re Sonar reports, Swiss Re in 2014, another one in 2019, a Vodafone report in 2017, all say that there is a huge health risk with EMFs. Clearly, that is the signal from the DC Court of Appeals ruling. There's been no update since 1996. You had the Department of the Interior even said to the FCC that your criterion are out of date and they're not safe. I mean, you can talk about the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences had a conference in 2017 in Israel with the Israel Institute of Advanced Sciences, talking about the dangers of 5G frequencies. And a lot of what they said there was the same, it was in a report by Los Alamos Labs and Brooks Air Force Base saying that these frequencies have damaging effects to humans. And just in closing, I would say, there's an Access Board report. The Access Board is a U.S. agency from 2005 that really disfavored the use of wireless. It said we should be using wireline technologies, especially indoors. If you're going to use wireless, it should be confined by foil-back drywall. And we have to get away from thinking that every nook and cranny should be covered by a wireless technology. These wireline technologies are more robust. We've made this investment in fiber, and it should be used, not just sitting in the ground. I understand that there have been some disincentives where the companies are not allowing the local fiber companies to hook in, which has created an artificial digital divide in some rural areas that need not exist. But this is an access issue to have wired technologies. And you asked at the beginning of this conference, we want to hear about your own connectivity issues. I'm going to speak to myself personally. I have fine connectivity in my house. I have DSL. And because I have electromagnetic sensitivity, I am reliant on my hardwired internet connection. I can't use the library because I can't tolerate the Wi-Fi there. I can't use the law library, so I have to have Westlaw. I pay for it. It comes into my house. But I'm very much confined to my house to work and live and do a lot of things because there's wireless being everywhere. And we cannot be having these hotspots everywhere, 5G towers. Leonard Hardell, who's the world's leading expert, had a consortium of scientists sign the 5G appeal that said that it's dangerous, and it was sent to the World Health Organization, et cetera. And we should be promoting safe technologies. Not only are we not using the precautionary principle, but the evidence exists to show that there's a problem. It's just that the PSC has been disregarding it or saying someone else says it's safe. Again, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals says you cannot continue to do that. And we have to think about having access for all. So when you talk about the effect on me, I can't go use internet in other places. And if there's a place where it's only wireless, I can have no access at all. It's hard for me to travel, or I certainly can't go to a hotel. I have to stay in people's homes that don't use Wi-Fi or shut it off. So there's a real access to me as these hardwired technologies are going away and being supplanted with wireless. I'm certainly not the only one. Toxicologists from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine will tell you up to 30% of people are affected to varying degrees. It may be 0.6% that can no longer access the indoor environment because of wireless, but these numbers are rising. And we have to think about access for all, and I would refer you all back to the 2005 Access Board report. I would encourage the state of New York, as we already have high penetration with broadband access, to continue to promote hardwired technologies, to invest in fiber to home, state of the art, and do what we know is safe and not replace it with an unsafe technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next listed speaker is Kara Hull. I think she was on earlier, but we heard from her this afternoon that she might not be able to stay on to speak. She has sent in her comments in writing, and we will assure that they are included in the case record. Our next speaker is Odette Wilkins. We did hear from you this afternoon at 1 o'clock. Do you have something that you want to add this evening?
No, that's quite all right. I've already included what I was going to say, but just to piggyback a little bit on what Deborah Copold was saying, if we are looking for digital inclusion, we need to include all people, including those who are EMS disabled, who are disabled because of wireless frequencies. And so they need to have access to the internet just as much as others who may not have a similar type of sensitivity. And we also have to be very careful with the children. The children are particularly sensitive to wireless radiation because it penetrates more deeply into their brain. And that has been scientifically established. So we really need to have wired solutions in the schools, no wireless in the schools whatsoever unless absolutely necessary. And then also, in order to make sure that everyone is included with access to the internet, it should also be for those who are electromagnetically sensitive, and therefore there should be accommodation made for those people. And the accommodation should be a wireline accommodation. Thank you very much for this second opportunity.
And thank you for your further comments. Our next speaker is Ellen Weininger.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this evening. My name is Ellen Weininger. I am the Director of Educational Outreach at Grassroots Environmental Education, a science-based environmental health nonprofit serving local and state governments, school systems, healthcare professionals, environmental and other organizations nationwide. It is imperative to ensure broadband access for all New Yorkers. However, let's be clear, 5G technology can't possibly close the digital divide, and anyone who makes that claim is seriously misinformed. The digital divide is an economic problem that 5G technology cannot and will not solve. The industry has been promising to stop digital redlining and connect minority and rural communities for decades when they first began to install fiber optic cable. But those communities were largely left out, even though the industry has been collecting extra fees on telephone bills for years to pay for fiber's installation. The way to close the digital divide is with community fiber, state-of-the-art fiber optic to and through the premises. One thing we know for certain is that fiber optic is a superior technology that is faster, much cheaper, more reliable, more secure, more energy efficient, future-proof, and comes with no serious health problems. On the other hand, wireless infrastructure, including 5G technology, is slower, expensive, energy intensive, less secure, and emits radio frequency radiation, an environmental pollutant linked with significant health effects. Thousands of peer-reviewed studies show biological harm from exposure to radiofrequency radiation, including DNA damage, oxidative stress, neurological, cardiovascular, and reproductive damage, and clear evidence of brain and rare heart tumors. Especially vulnerable populations include developing fetuses, children, the elderly, and those with cardiovascular and neurological problems, as well as those with implanted medical devices and those who are electrically hypersensitive. Indeed, the American Academy of Pediatrics has strongly urged the FCC to update their outdated 1996, over a quarter of a century old, standards because they do not account for the unique vulnerability and exposures specific to children and pregnant women. And you've heard earlier that in August 2021, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the FCC for ignoring thousands of pages of scientific evidence and failing to provide a reasoned explanation for its determination that its more than a quarter of a century old regulations adequately protect the public against all the harmful effects of wireless radiation, including its complete failure to address the harm to children and the environment. There's a huge difference between wired broadband and wireless broadband, and the Commission should make certain to ensure that public funds are used for wired broadband. Finally, the new federal broadband law prioritizes projects that support the deployment of 5G. The Commission should be joining other organizations and independent experts to urge Congress to fix the broadband law to ensure that all broadband projects receive equal consideration. We implore the Commission to take swift steps to get this right by ensuring wired broadband access for all New Yorkers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Pramila Mulig.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. So I would like to thank the Public Service Commission for holding these hearings and engaging with the public to advance just and responsible broadband policies for this great state. My name is Pramila Mulig. I am the chair of Protect Orange County. Our organization was formed to protect the health and safety of county residents and to safeguard the environment upon which we depend. We are most concerned with long-term impacts of policy decisions, as well as impacts on vulnerable populations such as children, the disabled, the elderly, as well as on environmental justice communities. Orange County is largely a rural community with 3 large population centers, including the cities of Newburgh, Middletown, and Port Jervis. The cities comprise of a very large number of socially and economically disadvantaged environmental justice communities who have expensive and inadequate broadband services. And the rest of the country consists of small rural towns with extremely poor broadband connections. I believe we can all agree, especially after the pandemic lockdowns, that access to high-speed broadband has become a critical necessity, and thus all broadband services should be considered a public utility and regulated as such. It has become a requirement for everything from basic employment to access to education and information to healthcare services and even court appearances. Everyone, bar none, must have access to high-speed, reliable, and consistent broadband. Rural communities especially are greatly deprived of quality internet, and in some places, none at all. The infrastructure needed to assure equal access to all New Yorkers must, however, and can indeed be done in a way that causes no harm whatsoever to public health and the environment. We urge the PSC to exercise the precautionary principle and reject widespread deployment of 5G antennas, which pose very serious health risks to human beings as well as wildlife. In my written comment, I will include several studies that establish these risks. But even with generous setbacks, 5G antennas pose risk to wildlife, which play a critical role in maintaining an ecological balance in our environment. Orange County is known for its rich natural resources, which includes many endangered species and rare migratory birds. Many of these species also help to maintain our agricultural resources, such as the endangered Indiana bat, who are uniquely vulnerable. In short, widespread deployment of 5G in rural communities can have catastrophic effects on the health of people, as well as our sensitive and critical environmental areas. Fortunately, we don't have to choose between health and broadband access. Wired broadband provides safer, faster, and more reliable internet. And this is the infrastructure that we must invest in. Wireless internet not only has untenable health risk, it is less consistent, more subject to interference, and has greater latency than wired internet. While at best, wireless can provide 300 to 400 megabits per second, wired internet can provide up to 1 gigabits per second. New York State has already acknowledged that fiber optics has better throughput than wireless services. Protect Orange County hopes that you do not fall prey to the influence of big companies such as AT&T and Verizon, who will naturally push 5G infrastructure, but exercise the precautionary principle, and B, build the infrastructure that will provide the most reliable and fastest service, which is, I think, as Deborah mentioned, fiber to the home, FTTH, also known as fiber to the premise, FTTP. This is what we need to meet and advance rural communities into the 21st century. It's an investment that will reap long-term economic benefits without sacrificing public health and our environment. I also urge that broadband be declared a public utility and that it be better regulated. I myself live in rural Minisink and am dependent on DSL because I do not even have any cable infrastructure at my home, as is the case with many of my neighbors. However, even still, while I pay for 25 megabits per second of download speed and 5 megabits per second of upload speed, I usually only get 8 megabits per second of download and 0.5 megabits of upload speed. And that too is intermittent. And this is due largely because my provider refuses to connect to a simple access point. So there's a lot that can be done to ensure adequate service and to close the digital divide. But everyone, all stakeholders and community members should be engaged in this process. I think any infrastructure plan that is approved and deployed, you have to include and notify all community members, and they should be notified and engaged in the process. And I also want to make one comment about the fact that we live in a global economy. And now as employees, we're not only competing with people across the United States, but we're competing with people in India and China and South America. And as great as New York State is doing with internet speeds, it's actually way behind much of the rest of the world. I mean, I think India ranks 68th in the world for internet speed, and it provides 68 megabits per second. So, you know, imagine over here in Minisink, we're not even getting 25. And then, of course, you know, United States doesn't even rank in the top 10. So I think we definitely need to close that divide, not only within our state, but also, you know, so that we can, our citizens can compete in a global marketplace. But I do believe that we need to have hardwired fiber optic infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. The last speaker I have on the list tonight of pre-registered speakers is Sharon McWethy. I do not see Ms. McWethy on the line, but I'm about to open up the floor to other people who would like to speak. If you could go to the slide that shows how to raise a hand. I see we have one hand raised already. Andrew Molnar, could you unmute Mr. Molnar?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. We can hear you. Go ahead and make your statement.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for your work on this issue. I have about 3 minutes of comments. My day job is as a management consultant, but I also volunteer as a leader in the group Ithacans for Responsible Technology. I'm from Ithaca, New York. Overall, I would like to see much more competition for internet service in my area, ideally using fiber optics. Now, I want to make it clear that there's a big difference between wired broadband and wireless broadband, as you've already heard. And I encourage the Commission to do everything possible to ensure that public funds are used for the wired broadband, not the wireless. Wired broadband is cheaper, it's faster, it's more reliable, it's more secure, and it comes with no serious health concerns. So community fiber optics are the best way to fix the digital divide, not wireless. Fiber optics. The new federal broadband law prioritizes projects that, quote, support the deployment of 5G, unquote. Now, the Public Service Commission should add its voice to the chorus of individuals and institutions that are calling on Congress to make a one-word fix in the broadband law to ensure that all broadband projects receive equal consideration, not prioritizing 5G or wireless over others. Now, the problem with the so-called 5G rollout is it's placing new cell antennas on nearly every block in towns around the country. This exposes the public in close proximity to harmful radiation 24/7. Literally thousands of studies, including a $25 million one from the National Institutes of Health, has shown that this microwave radiation is harmful. The World Health Organization has categorized this radiation in the same category of carcinogen as DDT and lead. And insurance companies will not cover telecom cell activities because they deem it too, quote, high risk, unquote. Think about that. Now, I used to work for an insurance company, and I know that they want to make as much money as possible covering everything they can. But even they will not cover cell companies because the science is so clear on the harm, and thus a huge risk to their bottom line. A week and a half ago, you might have seen the 60 Minutes special showing how this same microwave radiation is being used as a weapon against government officials. So claims that cell radiation is safe by the industry are just false. And they remind me of Big Tobacco, who knew of the problems of tobacco for decades, but denied it. Last year, as a couple of people have referenced already, the DC Circuit Court of Appeals confirmed that the current FCC guidelines of cell radiation are badly out of date, not taking all this science into account. And the state of New Hampshire has recently completed a thorough year-long review of wireless technologies. Its official commission, concluded that there are many problems with this technology, including health concerns. It's the first state to officially raise the red flag on this issue. Because of the desire of local officials and citizens here in Ithaca, New York, our city council recently passed new codes to keep any new antennas to a minimum, minimizing redundant infrastructure, as well as mitigating any potential harm. So this is a huge issue, and it's a growing problem, and I ask you to please take all of our thoughts into consideration and push for wired broadband, prioritizing that over wireless broadband. Thank you so much for letting me talk.
Thank you, Mr. Molnar. If you could hit that raise hand icon again to unraise your hand, then it'll be a little less confusing. Now there's an opportunity for anyone else who would like to speak. If you're on your computer and you can see how to get to the raised hand icon as we show in the slide that we're displaying right now, please hit that now. If you're on the telephone, please hit *3 on your handset now, and that will effectively raise your hand so we can identify you and let you speak. So either hit the raised hand icon or hit *3 on your telephone if you'd like to speak.
No raised hands, Your Honor.
Last call. Okay, seeing no requests for anyone who is currently participating to speak, I think we can wrap up this hearing. I want to remind members of the public that they may submit public comments throughout this proceeding. And if you could go back to that other ways to submit comment slide, by the means described earlier and in the notice of public statement hearing issued on January 26th. But as we've explained earlier, we really need to hear from you by March 18th to include your input into the study. I thank the commenters very much for their participation. I thank Commissioner Berman for participating, Joseph White and Sangeetha Kalis from our Consumer Services Office for administering this session, and our court reporter, Anthony McLean. Is there anything else to come before the hearing tonight?
No, Your Honor. We're all set.
No last minute requests to speak?
I don't see anybody, sir.
In that case, the hearing is concluded and we will go off the record.
Thank
We are
you.
off the record,
I'm
Your
going
Honor.
to end streaming now. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Anthony.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night. Stay safe. And we will now proceed to end the live stream and end this call. Thank you all again. Good night.
Thank you.